This week's daf is Daf Mem Zayin in Yevomos, and it's in the middle of the sugyas of Gerus. In the middle of the sugyas of Gerus. So we start at the at the bottom of Mem Vav Amud Beis. The Gemara tells a story. Amar Rabba Uvde Have Rabbi Chia. There was a story by Rabbi Chia bar Rebbe. Also, Rabbi Yosef Masni Rabbi Shaya bar Rebbe. And Rabbi Masni says it was also Rabbi Shaya was there. And Rav Safra Masni. Rav Safra says Rabbi Shaya bar Rabbi Chia, he was also there. And in front of him came a ger which had Mila and not Tvila. Amalei shoykan ad macham and belinach. Wait here until tomorrow, and we'll complete your gerus by doing tvila. Shmamin atlas. So from this we learn three things. Shmamin ager tzarach shaloisha. From the fact that Rav Safra was makbed, or to complete the story by saying that even there was a third person there, Rabbi Shaya, Rabbi Chia. So that was important because he wanted to tell you that you need three. And also that you need Mila and Tefillah, because he had Mila already. And so you see that Allah is that you need Mila and Tefillah. And also that you don't do a gerus balayla. And what's the reason? Because it has a din of mishpat. So this the Gemara says in a moment. Now the Gemara asks, why don't you also say that you need mumchin? And we would prove that from the fact that you had three mumchin, you had three gedolei adar there. So the Gemara says, maybe there's no raya from there, because maybe it just happened to be. So how did you learn? What's the halacha? Taki, you need mumchin, or taki, you don't need mumchin?
Is there any other situation where you need three mumchin?
Yeah.
Generally speaking, only one mumchin and two is
No, depends what kind of dinim. So Tosfos actually in Kiddushin enumerates some things that need mumchin and some don't. Over here, Tosfos only brings the idea that you would need mumchin, but by mishpat, certain dinei mominus, certain dinim need mumchin and some don't. Knossos versus edus. But
I guess around the ladies and when they were taught.
Yes, you need mumchin. Yeah, and therefore,
Like you asked, how did we learn? Like, how would you learn from a lack of a right to anything? All that was misdrads. Okay.
I would say, what's the kasha? I have a nema, be'ina nami mumchin. Maybe that's not halacha. That's why he didn't say shmamina. It's not halacha. You don't need mumchin. Why did he ask? How did you understand the Shaki Batari? Did he mean to say, we know we need mumchin, and from here I have a raya? Or is he saying, no, we don't need mumchin? Because it...
Why don't we say don't flow by shlosh? Since they mentioned
right. No. But you already had a purpose why you mentioned it, so there's no raya. But besides the raya, so the way I'm hearing from you is that the Gemara is only asking, do you have a raya this way or not? But the Gemara is not saying yes or no. The Gemara is not saying yes or no. That's the way you learn. Some learn, and Tosfos seems to pass in this way, that be'etzem you need mumchin, and that's the Gemara's kasha. The Gemara's kasha is what. We know we need mumchin, so why don't you say that you learn a shmamina, a fourth thing as well? Because we know the halacha is that you need mumchin, because mishpat ksiv bey. The same place that tells you that you need dayanim, you need shloisha, it's also the din that you need mumchin, you need a real beis din. So the Gemara is asking, why didn't you say Shema Mina? And then the Gemara is only saying, I don't have a raya from here, but the din is that you need mumchin.
But then is not that way. You need three mumchin for theirs.
We're not up to halacha ma'asiyah. First, what does the line in the Gemara say? Tosfos asked this question. Tosfos asked.
I thought you were saying that.
No. No, some learn that way. Tosfos Taka learns that way. Here and in Kiddushin, Tosfos over here asks, that's Tosfos Kasha. So I asked the Tasha, what are you talking about? The Gemara just said that there's no raya. Yeah, the Gemara only meant I can't bring a raya from here, but you need mumchin, and that's the third line in Tosfos on our daf. How can we accept gerim? Mumchin. So where do we know all these halachas from? So the Gemara Amar Rabbi Barab Amar Rabbi Yochanan Ger Tzarich Shloisha. A ger needs a basin of 3. This is the last lines on Yevomos base. Mishpat Ksiv Bei, because it says Mishpat Achaz Yelachem V'Lager. One mishpat for you and the ger. So you see that the ger is mishpat. So you need a basin of shloisha for geras. So you need a basin of shloisha that we see, and then l'chayra would also be a din of mishpat that you need mumchin. Now Tosfos Kiddushin asks, we know that some things, like you say, some things require a basin of mumchin, and some things don't require a basin of mumchin. That just because it says mishpat that you need a basin of mumchin, because so if you have mishpat, sometimes the Torah says mishpat means that sometimes dinim and basin need a basin of mumchin, some don't, and it says mishpat, you're going to make a hekesh to the more strict, to the chumrah, that it has to be that you need mumchin, and so mamela you need mumchin. So mamela Tosfos here and there asks the question: so how can you have a basin of? So how can you have a bima kabel gerim nowadays? So Tosfos says over here that shlichos hayu kavdina. We know as a general rule that certain dinim based in set up that future bati din that are non-mumchim can do on their behalf, because it has to be done. And because it has to be done, so mamela, we're doing mishlichos hayu. Eina chanami, our based in cannot do it.
We don't have to do mumchin?
No. Many dinim that we can't do. So we don't have the mumchin. Mary Barav wanted us to have, but we don't have. We don't have smicha. We don't have the mumchin. No, not to be mumchin, but you need a beis din. You need a din beis din, and the mumchis is going to come b'shlichus of that. Our beis din b'shlichus of their beis din. To our beis din. Yeah. So Tosfos over here says an interesting svara. What's the reason? Why do we have by halvais? You also need shtaris. You need mumchin, and the Gemara says why shaloitinal delas b'fnei lovin, so that borrowers won't be shut out. People need to be able to borrow money, and if you're not going to be able to borrow money, it's ni'ilas delas b'fnei lovin. You're shutting out the opportunity for a halva. You can't do that. So mamela, they set up a shlichus that the future generations could do it on the shlichus of the previous base. So too, you have to have gerim. Shaloitinal delas b'fnei gerim. They said. Right? Yeah. Who says you have to have gerim? Yeah. Maybe not. I know it'd probably be a hard thing for us because we already have this thing. But maybe. What told Chazal that there is a need for gerim? Tosfos in Kiddushin says it differently. It doesn't say the words of Shaloitinal Delas B'fnei Lovin. It says because it says the Durasechem. And the way by ger, it says l'dorasechem for your generations, which tells us that all generations can have gerus. And the mashmais of the way Tosfos is learning over there is that he's saying, even though usually we would say that l'chomra makshina, and if it says mishpat, it means that you have to have gerim. You have to have a beis din of mumchin. But since the Torah says l'dorasechem, that gerus is every generation, Baal Karchach, the Torah meant that you don't need mumchin. So Tosfos over here is learning, we're doing a shlichus of the mumchin. Really, we can't do gerus. We're only doing a shlichus hayim. Tosfos over there is learning, no. It needs a beis din of shloisha, but it does not need mumchin. Even though normally I would have said it needs mumchin, you don't. And so in this Gemara over here, it's a big nafkamina how to learn this line. The Gemara says, "Shmamina v'nema shmamina nami be'ina mumchin." As a kasha, maybe you would say you need mumchin. No, it just happened to be that way. But enachanami, you don't need mumchin. You don't. Yeah. That you don't need mumchin. No, the Gemara is asking, maybe Taka, you need mumchin. So the Gemara says, no, you don't. Every shmami, no, every kasha, the Gemara says, maybe this is the halacha. No, it's not the halacha.
No, but here it's just a maybe. It's a dilma they flow. Like the Gemara doesn't have a teretz.
No, you that's on the shmami chelik, yeah. They didn't bring the brusha for either yet. So the Gemara is just saying mishpat, but you don't know that you need mumchin. Gemara didn't bring a statement on mumchin in the end either way, right? So Lamaisa there's enough kamina. Tosfos over here learns Niyataka need mumchin, and that we're only able to be makabel gerim bizmanenu b'shlichus of the beis din that. And Tosfos over there learns that no, enachanami, we can bring we can accept. And this is the Gemara, the Etzem Tosfos didn't make up the drasha of the Dorasechem. It's a Gemara later, where the Gemara says that you have to, that Geir, Bizmana Beis HaMikdash had to bring the korban. That was a chelik of the din. And nowadays, we're not bringing a korban, so how can we accept the Geir? He's missing a component. He's missing a component. The Gemara says the Dorasechem. So Tosfos is only borrowing that drasha, but be'etzem we see that a din that's mi'ikr, so the Dorasechem would not be there. So then the kasha becomes, what does it mean l'Dorasechem? There's l'Dorasechem, just like by a korban. It says l'Dorasechem, really you have to bring a korban. And in a time that you can't bring a korban, that's not ma'akiv. That will not invalidate the gerus. But the gerus requires a korban. The Dorasechem doesn't tell you, since sometimes there's no Beis HaMikdash, therefore you never need a korban. What it says is you need a korban, and if there's no Beis HaMikdash, it's still a good gerus. So maybe the din is really you need a mumche even in bisman of Beis HaMikdash. Sorry, in this man of Beis Din, you would need mumche. And the Gemara is right. The stomach, the way the Gemara is questioned. You say Shmamina, you need mumchin. And Einachanami, that's the halacha. Even Tosfos over there would hold like our Tosfos. Tosfos is only saying in one chilek. Bizmanenu, just as with a korban, you say, it'll be kosher, a gerus, even if you didn't bring a korban. So too, it'll be kosher even if you don't have mumchin. But it doesn't mean that you don't need mumchin. Really, you need mumchin. But l'Dorasechem tells you, bedar, that there is no mumchin, it'll be kosher anyhow. Just like bedar, that there is no korban, it's kosher anyhow. Which is a tremendous chiddush. That the din of the Beis Din changed from one dar to the next. So now I have three ways of learning this din of mishpat that the Gemara says they need Beis Din. Tosfos over here learns that enachanami we need mumchin, and even bizmanenu you need mumchin, and we can only do gerus b'shlichus of the Beis Din. Tosfos over there that would be learning that maybe you never needed it, because the whole drasha is a hekesh of mishpat to mishpat. Normally, I would say mishpat means to makish to the to the stricter lechumra makshinan, and you need a based on a shloisha mumchin. But over here, since it says that they're resechem, and you're not always going to have mumchin, so Mamela, I'm going to say that when the pasuk said mishpat, I'm going to be makish at the times that you don't need mumchin, and the in between way is no, that really you need mumchin. And the hekesh lekesh makshinan. However, the Doresechem tells me in a door that you don't have it. It's kosher without that. So is it a mamish lechatchila? It's not the way it's supposed to be, but b'doreinu it's kosher, or it's not really kosher anyway. We're not really being able to do the beis din. We're doing a b'shlichus of the beis din back then. Yeah, these are the. Three dinim. So now, what is the halacha? Klape what do you need based in a shloisha? Based in when Bizman, then it was mumchin set up that shlichasayu kavdinon, like the Gemara says about Bavel shlichasayu kavdinon, and no, it's not a mumchas in this din. It's smuchin. It's a based din. It's a based din, as opposed to 3 Talmid Chachamim.
Special hour needed for this, but the real smicha
To get a real smicha, you have to know. You have to know this and everything else too.
No, because I'm saying, if you tell me that you need a mucha in these halachos, and we're doing the shlichos, it's like.
It's not Yudea B'Tiv Kiddushin. No, we're not. It's not Yudea Tiv Kiddushin. That's the din of like you can't be involved in Kiddushin unless you know Hilchas Kiddushin well. You can't be involved in Gerushin unless you know B'Tiv Gerushin. No, this is not that. This is not what we mean Mumchin over here. Mumchin over here means that they are Mumchin in Dayonis, that they are Smuchin, that they are a Sanhedrin, they are a Beis Din. Not say Hadar Gedolah, but they're a Beis Din. That's what Mumchin would be. And we don't have Smuchin. We don't have a proper Beis Din like that. So that's what it is. Okay. So Kalape, which dinim is the halacha that you need? Beis Din. So the Gemara doesn't tell us. It just says Shmamina Ger Tzarech Shloisha. Now, Asal Kameh, over here, the Mila already happened. So what seems in our Gemara, we would say that for the Mila, you don't need Shloisha. You don't need Shloisha. That would be the pashas of our Gemara. It would seem in our Gemara that for the Tevila, you do need. Because that's what was going on here. He did Tevila. But this is a matter of big machlokes. Because Asal Kamim Ger Shamal, he already had Mila. What's a raya that you need Shloisha, that you need 3? Because the Tvila that they did the next morning was done in front of these great Chachamim. But what happened with the Mila? The Mila doesn't need Shloisha. What about the Tvila? Does it Tvila need Shloisha or only the Kabbalas mitzvahs? So that's a din over here. We see on Amud Beis. We tell them the diktukei mitzvahs, yeah, and it says Shnei Talmidei Chachamim oimdim al gabav u'midim oisem mitzvahs kalas matbilan oisem miyad u'shnei Talmidei Chachamim oimdim al gabav u'midim oisem mitzvahs kalas mitzvahs chamuras. Tavav alarei Yisrael. So in Amud Beis, on the 5th line of the Gemara says Shnei Talmidei Chachamim. All you need is 2. No, the Hodah mitzvah was already before, meaning, okay, so let's just qualify one thing. We saw that there's Kabbalah's mitzvahs and Mediyah mitzvahs. The Kabbalah's mitzvahs was beforehand. What does it want to say? That you push him away, and then he has to be Makabal mitzvahs. He says, I'm not roy, but I want it anyhow. And there's a Gemara Bechorah says that Mefurish that he has to be Makabal mitzvahs b'fnei shlosh. Kabbalah's mitzvahs, not a shaila that he needs to be Makabal mitzvahs b'fnei beis din. Question is, the tefillah do you need b'fnei beis din or not? Now the pashas. So, but over here, where we're learning it from is by tefillah. They told him, come back tomorrow and we'll toivel you. What was that? That was, we're learning Shmamina being on class, Shmamina that you need a basin of 3, and that's talking about tefillah.
That's what they're doing tomorrow. What they're doing right now.
Nothing. They said, come back tomorrow and we'll toivel you.
Tefillah tomorrow, so they can't do tefillah at night. They can't come back tomorrow.
But the 3 of them.
What? There were 3 of them there.
For what? For which part? What did they do?
Well, the Ham's not doing tefillah now.
So that. So the 3 of them said, come back tomorrow to us.
We're assuming that all 3 of them are going to be tomorrow.
That's what they said. Come back to us. Right? V'nit balinach. We will be toivel you. Oh, so there's a thesis that says that really all you need is Kabbalah's mitzvahs. You're doing the Kabbalah's mitzvahs by the mikveh. So Memela, you need 3 there, but you don't need 3 midin tvila itself. Kabbalah's mitzvahs before tvila. Before tvila, yeah.
You don't really need the 3 for the tefillah. You need it for the stuff before. You can't do it at night. Wait till tomorrow. We'll do Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and then you'll be
Great. I mean, they chose the less important one, because really the tefillah can be done tonight then. Because you don't need basin.
But you can't do Kabbalah's mitzvahs till tomorrow.
Meaning really, right? So they picked the agav thing.
It means we'll finish the process tomorrow.
Okay.
We'll do the tefillah, meaning we'll do
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I don't have a kasha on that. It's just interesting that they have chosen the one that's not necessary for Beis Din and left and not said, come tomorrow, we'll do Kabbalah's mitzvahs.
Why can't they do Kabbalah's mitzvahs tonight?
Whatever the din Beis Din is a din of Tchilas din. Din ain't done in Malayla. Ain't done in Malayla. Right? That's the word. Ain't done in Malayla. And it's a din mishpat. You don't do Beis Din at night. And
that's very sure. I mean, that's very not sure. That's very odd because the Gemara's lesson is that we're in.
Right. The whole Gemara seems to be that the Tvila needs a Beis Din. However, Tosfos brings a raya that's a very strong raya from Daf Memhei. The Gemara Daf Memhei asks, somebody came to somebody who was living as a Jew, and somebody said, "Look, you never did gerus." And when I said "Miloi tavala linidasa, Miloi tava lakeria," she already went to the mikveh once as a nida. He's already gone to the mikveh once as a carry. So they've been to the mikveh. Frag says, yeah, but there's no Beis Din. So you see from this, you went to the mikveh already once, so it must be that it was that you already had a mikveh. What are you talking about? It was shaloi b'fnei Beis Din. Shaloi b'fnei Beis Din doesn't work. Tema. The Amalekam on the Geretz Arach Shloisha the Mishpah Ksiv Bey. This is the last Tosfos on Mem Mehei Amud Beis. It's a wonder. How can you say this? The Gemara, our Gemara that we're talking about, Geretz Arach Shloisha the Mishpah Ksiv Bey. You need a Beis Din of 3 because it says Mishpat. And even according to the opinion that says that one is also kosher as a beis din, even one. No, there's no single man by a woman when she went to the mikvah. So you need to have a beis din of one either. Yeah. So Tosfos says the haida bein on shloisha haina lekabalas mitzvos have a loyla tvila. So Tosfos over here, Tosfos elsewhere as well, says must be that this that you need shloisha is only for the kabbalas mitzvos and not for the tvila. All right, from this Gemara. Then Tosfos says, what about the Gemara later? It says, it's better to have two. It's even better to have three, but you don't need it. It's kosher with one as well. And then Tosfos says a tremendous chiddush. V'yesh mefarshim. The kivan the yedua lakol shetovla ki ilo oimdim sham dami. That's a tremendous chiddush. Tosfos says maybe it counts as bifnei shloisha when everybody knows about it. If everybody, meaning enough people, know about it.
It's because like in those days Nida was more public.
Well, first of all, Nida was public because of Tumah and Tara, so people have to know. Because it was Nageya for Tara all the time. I mean, you have to know whether this chair was Tara or not. You had to know. So people constantly knew whether somebody was a Kerry, whether somebody. I mean, you had to just say, "I'm sorry, I'm tummy." Because he had Shalom Melech, right? His son came. He says, "Build the Torah," right? It's a moment of lack of Tara. Please, leave me alone. Tumah and Tara was when Tumah and Tara was Tumah and Tara. Everybody always had to know everybody's status, where they were. So somebody, I went to mikvah.
Even like Stan, people would know when a woman went to mikvah because switch clothing.
Yeah, but everybody would know. I'm saying everybody would know. Everybody went to mikvah because you had to say I'm Tamei and say I went to mikvah. I'm good. You can. It's just the nature of it. So they knew. So the question is nowadays, if you had three rabbanim that knew that somebody went to mikvah, does that count? Or if somebody went to Shem Nida, would that count? Was that enough? As Tosfos. So the Maisa, we don't paskin this idea. Joaquin Espinosa is getting on. Sorry, Joaquin Espinosa is getting on. So the question is, if somebody did not, does it count as having gone to the mikveh? Does that count? In any case, Tosfos holds over here. Levi Yaakov, I'm going to mute you, and if you need to speak, you'll unmute yourself. Okay. So if somebody went to the mikveh, Tosfos says that would count as b'fnei shloisha. So now we have in Tosfos itself two stadim.
Since we know about this person and that they're showing this, so we know that they went to the mikvah, like that's good enough. So
I had such a story where somebody thought for many years that they were Jewish, and then we'll talk about the halacha also, whether they found out or didn't find out from. But I asked from Shlomo Miller, Lamaisa, I know, and several other rabbanim in town would know that on specific occasions that this person went to the mikveh. Is that enough to say that Miloi Torah? Normally we don't say that, but if we know the person is Shema Torah mitzvahs.
Does that count as a kabbalah? There's no
does that
have to be like an active like that doesn't say like argument kabbalah mitzvahs? Just the fact that
so that I asked before the kabbalah mitzvahs, does this count? And he blew me out the door like one knockout punch. Huh? We'll get to that in a moment. But he what is it? He said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I said, enough that person shouldn't have to break Shabbos until they get a proper gerus? Absolutely. It's nothing. It's nothing. You need a beis din.
So he doesn't hold it at whole story in place. It could be accounts for that, but it's not.
In halacha, we don't go with this. Period. Asar said the Rabbi. You never use it. Never use it. You need a proper beis din at the mikveh. Nothing else. Probably cut it out. Yeah. No, you have a gemara. It's shalei la'alacha. This gemara is not la'alacha. You need beis din, and you need beis din for the mikveh as well, not only for the Kabbalah mitzvahs. Now it's interesting. Rashi in Kiddushin.
We know the person is showing the you, so how does that count as a Kabbalah mitzvah? If you need information.
This same svara as Tosfos. If it works for when I don't see them, just I know they went, for sure when I see them doing mitzvahs, that's a Kabbalah mitzvah. I don't know. I was asking based on this svara and Tosfos. I was asking based on this. Yeah, I was saying, why do we count this? And he was like, never, ever.
Why do I ever need three in that too, right? I mean, if the non-tahadi is good enough, shouldn't Aedis itself, shouldn't Aedis be just good? Why do I ever need three? How can I have two people say I went to mikvah and all that?
And not even two, zero. Tosfos is saying nobody saw.
Well, no, I mean, that's in a situation where there's a non-tahadi, where there's like a pashtus that they went, but like.
We know.
In our doctrine,
this is Rav Moshe Schol of Yisrael. It's like, we know.
That's what I'm saying. That's more of a non-tahadi. That's like a like that's like a whatever. I'm talking about then Mem Zayin. We're talking about someone that says Beni Le'inatzmi, right? So there, where there's no umdana, it's not a woman going for nida. There's no like assumption that this person went to the mikvah. They had two agents that went to the mikvah. Right? So there, it seems like there's a hakpada on three. Right? Why we never need three? Why can't you have two Adam called it? Right? Why isn't that just
because you needed them based in Mishpah?
So what, if the two Adam call a bezdin, right?
No, the Tvila, the Kabbalah mitzvahs needs three.
Let's say you two on everything. Right? Call a bezdin, all of those things. Shouldn't that accomplish the same thing as umdana? I mean, the same way that the fact that we know Bavat, we see them being like right. Why is the umdana better than Edis?
Yeah, the umdan is the beis din itself seeing it. The Edis is the beis din knows nothing. Two Edim come.
But Edim are the best form of chaffa, right? So like,
no, this is not. Yeah, that you need the Kabbalah Edis and the mikvah for the beis din itself. So the Ma'aseh Halacha we paskin, you need both the mikvah and Kabbalah mitzvahs has to be done if nei beis din and that's the halacha. We have another shita. The shitas a second. I want to start with Rashi. Rashi says not like Tosfos. Rashi says you need like Rashi Kedushin that you need shloisha for Kabbalah mitzvahs and mikvah. And Rashi over here says, so why would it work? On Memvav. Sorry, Mem Hey. Miloi Tavali Nidasa. Oisa Tvila, Oila Lola Tvilas Gerus. The Das Yehudis he. Because the mikveh is a mikveh for din Torah. I don't know how to interpret Rashi, but Rashi seems to be saying some sort of idea that even though you need beis din, but if you're doing the mikveh for a mitzvah, that would count. Even though you have a din that for gerus you need a beis din at the mikveh, like Rashi himself says in Kedushin, but here it would work because the mikveh is das Yehudis. You're doing it as a mitzvah, as a part of mitzvah. So it's like a Kabbalah. It's like a Kabbalah mitzvah. It's like a you're going into Torah. I don't understand how he's taking care of the beis din part. Rashi's trying to say something. I have no idea. Like I don't know what to do with that, and I haven't seen anybody that says what's Rashi's vort? Well, Rashi's asking the question. Rashi's saying, and why does it work, right? The das Yehudas. I don't know if you have something. Tell me. But Rashi seems to be saying a vort in that somehow, even though it says mishpat, and you need a beis din, doing it l'shem Torah, l'shem mitzvah is going to be sufficient. Okay. The Torah holds that the Torah says that you also need a beis din for the milah. Now, Ramosha Tshuva, the Bach says that we don't pass it that way. But Ramosha Tshuva has a lengthy Tshuva. Somebody had thought that they were Jewish, did a bris, and then realized they weren't, and so they were doing a gerus. And the question was, do you need to redo atafa? Do you need to do atafas dam bris for the child when it be megar with the mother, because the child didn't have a proper milah, and there was no din based in there. So do you need based in for the child or not? And Ramesha says, I don't understand the Torah, which is really the kasha that we asked before, because the Gemara clearly, in the case of Shema min al-ger tzorach shloisha, in that story, Matbilin, he already came as a mohel. He came as somebody that's already mohel, and yet he says that he would need shloisha. So Ramosha says, Lula Mistafina, if I wasn't afraid, I would say that the Torah means something in a weird case where somebody went to the mikveh before he had a milah, where according to some that counts. In that case, because the milah is the completion of the gerus, whereas in our case, the reason why you need for the Kabbalas mitzvahs and tvila, you need a beis din, because that's the completion of the gerus. So Ramesha says the vart is that, you know what part of gerus needs shloisha? The final part, the becoming a yid. Mishpat echad lachem v'lagera. You, and for the ger to be a mishpat with you, that's where you need mishpat. That's where you need the beis din. So the beis din is for the completion of the gerus. That's the Kabbalas mitzvahs and the tvila usually. But if the tvila was before the milah, so the milah also needs it. But of course, if you did the milah beforehand, then it doesn't need a beis din. And Ramesh says, of course, you should try and have a beis din if you could. But if you don't have a beis din, it's going to be kasher. That's the way Ramosha says la halacha. L'maisa, we try and have a beis din for all three parts, but it's just two things in the Ramosha. One, this chiddush of the Torah, which seems to be shver from our Gemara, and that Ramosha says the vart is that you need the beis din for the completion of the gerus. Way best. Okay, let's jump in to this case of where this person. So the Gemara goes into a chiddush din that somebody, that it could be that there's an amonis for someone that he can say that he's a yid or that he had a gerus, outside of Eretz Yisrael, but in Eretz Yisrael he's not going to be ne'eman. And there's a lot of reasons why would there be a chilik and din of ne'emanis in Eretz Yisrael versus outside Eretz Yisrael. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Gershon is gar bebeis din, or is a ger beino lebenatzma in a ger. Ma'aseh be'echad. A story with somebody Shabbat lefnei Rabbi Yehuda v'amalin is gayarti beini lebenatzmi. I made a gerus between myself, myself. I was magar myself. Amalei Rabbi Yehuda yesh l'cheidim, says you have witnesses. Amalei lav yesh l'chabanim, said yeah. Amalei hen. Amalei said to him nemanat lifzel atzmacha v'yata neman lifzel benecha. You can make a statement about yourself. You cannot make a statement about others. The Gemara says, for sons, you're not Neman. Yakir. Yakir says the father has a right to define for his children their status. So I said, fine. So the Gemara goes into that, whether it's a Nemanis or not. So as the Gemara says, you're not Jewish, so you're not Neman.
But that says that Pasha says this case is something before.
So we get into muchzakas. This whole amud really goes into, we talk about someone that's a muchzik already as a Jew, somebody that's not muchzik as a Jew. The Gemara over here, this case for sure, was talking about that he and his children were muchzik, right? As Jews. So going back to that case of Rabbi Shlomo Miller, and I asked this case about this person. So Rabbi Shlomo Miller said, who told this person that they're not Jewish? And he said that they grew up knowing that they were Jewish. Who told this person they're not Jewish? He said their mother said that the mother who also grew up Jewish said that their mother was not Jewish and never converted. So he said, Yakir. She can't, this person's already a muchzik as a yid.
Didn't only was a father?
Then it goes to father. This person has a din of a yid. This person has a din of a yid. Has always been a yid. The mother now comes and says, you're not Jewish. So go ahead and do gerus for. I said, well, you just said that the mother's not ever, so what do you need gerus for? He said, the mother's probably telling the truth. You're not lying, right? She's probably telling the truth. So then they're not. No, they have a muchzakas. Chazaka is a real thing. He said the chazaka is person's a yid. So in all things they have to treat them as a yid. Chazaka is the person's a yid. But the mother's probably not lying. 5 years from now, you may have proof, not because the mother said so, because you'll find their own evidence. So do the gears. So that whenever that happens, it doesn't happen. So the person is a muchzik as a yid beforehand, still muchzik as a yid, but also again. This did a yakir. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I don't know which kind is going to want to go on the muchzakas. but yeah. It's there's a story told similarly of Ramosha. Somebody he came up to be Masada Kedushin at a chuppah, and as he's coming to the chuppah, the mother whispers to Ramosha, "It's my child, but not for my husband. My son is my child, not for my husband." Essentially saying he's a mamzer, and they're not allowed. He's not allowed to get married here, and you, Rav Moshe, can't officiate this wedding. Rav Moshe says, Yakir, it's a father's job, not a mother's job to state the status. Let's go make brachas. Yeah, they say they didn't flinch. Yeah, it's nothing. That's not the halacha. They went ahead and did it.
That's it. Not worried?
Worried of?
What happens to do a paternity test, right?
So?
Like,
There's a chazak.
Roiv.
Roiv.
Will be evidence that can come
No,
out.
Roiv. Allah is Roiv. Roiv. Yeah, Roiv bilas achabal. Not Nema.
That sounds rich, right?
That's a din. That's a din. That's Allah. And that's the halacha. The father's job is yakir. It's the father's job to state the status of the child. Okay. You didn't know either. Yeah. So the Gemara goes through the Seder. So the Gemara goes through.
Like hair color, eye color.
The Gemara goes through the Seder of Gerus. The Gemara goes through the Seder of Gerus and says that you have to give Kabbalah's mitzvahs. You have to tell them the mitzvahs and push them away. Tell them the difficulty. Tell them the mitzvahs. So it's interesting. First of all, the Gemara says, why? Why avaleka chikapeya? Why just put that one? So the Tosfos Shadim says, because of stand your ground laws. Because unless this person live in Texas, and they know that if somebody comes onto my property, I shoot him dead. And he now is becoming a yid, he needs to know that there's din of leka chikapeya, and somebody's going to come into your field to start taking some of the corner and the leftovers. You have to know that's that's what Tosfos Shadim says. He doesn't say Texas, but he does say that this idea.
You can tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea of why you tell that particular mitzvah. There's other reasons given, but that's an interesting one. And then they tell them the Einshimas. What? Where is it right? Yeah, no, Rashi's saying it's slightly different. Rashi's saying that a Goslin is even Shavapruta, even less a Shavapruta by a goy. But that Rashi's saying because he's used to din akum. He himself, up until now, before he became a ger, would have zayin mitzvahs of zela, and by a guy even less than shavapruta has a din of iser and memisin oisela, and he gets the capital punishment, and so therefore he thinks that this is the law, but not that he's going to take the law in his own hand, but rather that he may think that that's the law with it. Yeah, but
a different reason for why they're
but not for standing, not because someone's in my property, but because of dinner gazela, right? That's a chiddush is the stand your ground, the what's the law? Your castle law? Your forget what the law is. So somebody steps, Texas law. Somebody steps on your land, you can shoot him even in the back if he's walking off. It's good law. Anyhow, and then Mekabel Moshe. So the Gemara first says that where do we have these dinim of telling him pushing him away and telling him all the dinim? So we learn it from Rus. The Gemara says, this is Ahmed Bey's halfway down. She stopped talking to her. Amrullah, first she said to her, Asr lan Tchum Shabbos. It is also for us to do Tchum Shabbos, meaning here are some of the halachas. You're not allowed to travel. Where you're allowed to go, I'm allowed to go. I'm not going to go anywhere else. Amrullah Asr lan Yichud. You're not allowed to be with another man. As you sleep, I sleep. I will only be in places that you're allowed to be. We have Taryag mitzvahs. Amech ami. Your nation is my nation. You can't have idolatry. Your God's my God. There's capital punishment. Abba Mrs. Beistin. Ba'asher Tamusi Amis. So this is a very important Gemara because in the last 80, 100 years, there have been two Paiskim who wrote an idea in Psak that has been wholly rejected by all the Paiskim and has been very, to say controversial is at least it's been destructive in the halachas ageris. The argument they have is in two separate chuvas, these two Paiskim, that you can convert to Yehadis, to Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and you convert to Am Yisrael. You convert to being a part of Am Yisrael. You don't want to do mitzvahs. Because the Gemara in Bechira says that if a person is Mekabel, Kol HaTorah Kula, even one diktuk derabana, or minag, says, I'm not Mekabel that, and Mekabel this. You don't do it. There's machlekes of the place. If a person was Mekabel Kol HaTorah without one derabanan or one diktuk, whether it works if you did it anyhow, the halacha for sure is that you have to do Kabbalah's mitzvahs, and if not, there's nothing. You need Kabbalah's mitzvahs by Beis Din, right? You need Kabbalah's mitzvahs in Beis Din, and you're going to do a gerus without Kabbalah's mitzvahs. So these two tshuvas svarim, it's known by one, but really it's in two places that say that no, there's a din of Kabbalah's mitzvah. There's a din of gerus to Am Yisrael, not to Torah's Yisrael, to Am Yisrael. And the mistake is inherent in their misinterpretation of Am Yisrael. We find Chazal consistently throughout the Torah, whenever the Torah says Am, it means mitzvah. We find Lamashal by helping in certain mitzvahs, by Hashavas Aveda and other things. It says Amcha ba'osei ma'aseh Amcha. Amcha means, you know what it means to be Am Yisrael? There is no such thing as I'm not Makabel mitzvahs. I just want to be Jewish. I want to be part of the Jewish people. I want to live in Israel and work the land and fight for the people. That's not Ma'amcha. That's not Am Yisrael. Consistently throughout the Torah, Chazal understand Amech, Amcha to mean Oisei Ma'aseh Amcha. And here too, by Gerus, Mamish here. By Rus, when she said Amech Ami, the Gemara interprets what did it mean by Amech Ami? Not, and I'm no longer an Ammonite. I'm a Moabite. I'm now a part of Am Yisrael. I identify as a Jew. No, Chazal say Taryag mitzvahs, Sheish Meis v'Yud Gimel mitzvahs, Amech Ami. That's Amech Ami is I'm willing to accept the Taryag mitzvahs. So you see this idea that they have that Amech, that you can be an Am Yisrael and not Torah's Yisrael. No, the Gemara is clearly saying that the din of Amech Ami means accepting the mitzvahs. It means accepting the mitzvahs. There's no such thing as a gerus. It cannot exist, a gerus, where somebody accepts some mitzvahs and not other mitzvahs. Mitzvahs, Amech Ami is Taryag mitzvahs. To be part of Am Yisrael means they have to accept all Taryag mitzvahs. And it's not controversial. Those tshuvas are controversial. That this is totally accepted by I mean, there's no question in halacha that that's the only type of gerus. What? Yeah, it was in Eretz Yisrael no, this is in Eretz Yisrael in the basically 20s and 30s. There were two giants that said this idea. Somebody comes to Eretz Yisrael and wants to be, they don't keep mitzvahs, but they want to be a part of Am Yisrael. They're gonna.
What would be the process of like you go through?
They go through a gerus without Kabbalah's mitzvahs. The ger toshav is not a yid. Someone who will count for minyan, can marry a Jew, but doesn't have to keep mitzvahs. No, there's no such thing. But they interpreted the word from the words of Amech, from they said there's Am Yisrael. They want to be Ami. They missed often a Gemara here by Gerus, and consistent. It's not just over here. It's consistent throughout Torah. Wherever it says Am, it means ba'osei ma'aseh Amcha. There are many halachas you're exempt. You don't have to do something when somebody is not living as a Jew. You don't have to do it because it says Amcha. Amcha means living as Taryag mitzvahs. It's totally not. It's been wholly rejected by all the poskim, but I'm only bringing it not for that, just for the understanding of Amech Ami. To be Am Yisrael means to have Taryag mitzvahs, to live in mitzvahs. One last point, the Gemara says, Kibel Molanoizim Miyad. Once the ger is ready, is makabel mitzvahs, we do milah for him right away. Why? Why do we do it right away? All right, to take a week, 2, 3. My timer shehuyi mitzvah loy mashahina. You don't push off a mitzvah. If there's a mitzvah to be done, you do it right away. Whose mitzvah? What? Whose mitzvah is it?
Is there a mitzvah?
He's not here. Whose mitzvah is it? He's not. Who's?
No, but the minute becomes a Jew.
He's not a Jew yet. He says, I'd like to become a Jew. We tell him it's difficult. He says, I want to do it anyhow. We tell him, there's such hard mitzvahs. I want to do it anyhow. You know that the punishment's terrible. I want to do it anyhow. You can't kill somebody who comes into your field to take lekach and. I want it anyhow. All right. The Gemara says, Mala noisamiyat. Why? You can't postpone a mitzvah.
All the mitzvahs he's gonna do.
But he's not mechuyev mitzvahs.
But once he's how is going to do mitzvahs, he's going to fulfill mitzvahs. So we want to bring it
sooner. Okay. So those that learn that from this Gemara, you see that Gerus is a mitzvah on Beis Din. It's a mitzvah on Beis Din. He makes a bracha on Tefillah. What do you mean on what? No, he makes a bracha after he comes out. That's why he makes a bracha after.
After he comes out, but when was he in the mitzvah?
Gita v'yada b'en kechat. Mitzvosai v'chiyuvai b'en kechat. No, but there's no mitzvah yet. So what a mashem mitzvah? I can wait for next week. There's no mitzvah yet. I'm not holding up a mitzvah. There is no mitzvah.
He has the ability to.
He has no mitzvah. He has a mitzvah to be in his gayer. When he's a goy, he has a mitzvah to be in his gayer.
No, but that mitzvah is gonna. He has the ability to do it right now.
But there is no mitzvah to do. He's not holding on a mitzvah. There is no mitzvah to do. Shui mishra le'mishayinon l'chora is a raya, and those that say this is that you see that there's a mitzvah on Beis Din, mishpat, that there's a mitzvah on Beis Din to be megayer. Now we don't proselytize, we don't push it. In fact, we push it away. But once they're ready, there's a mitzvah on Beis Din to do gerus. Which mitzvah? It's not one of the Taryag mitzvahs. It's in Mishpat. It says that there is a mitzvah to do this. Kiyumis maybe. I don't know. But there's a mitzvah. Mitzvah based on to be Megayer and Mamela. Shir mitzvah levashina.